Thanks.
I'm
Have a good
telling
night.
Victoria that we don't need to do singing lessons like that or gymnastics or any dance lessons.
Yeah.
They're just expensive, you know, and I
Oh,
even want
no. Hey, please.
Sorry, we closed already. Come back tomorrow.
No, but tomorrow's Mother's Day. Hey. I have cash.
Let's make it snappy, boys. I got some hungry kitties to get home to.
Okay.
I don't know why you want to buy your wife something that's just going to be dead in 3 days.
It's a thank you for all the slack she picks up with our family. I mean, you and I both know I'm a mediocre dad and husband at best.
Hey, listen up here, mi amigo. Buying your wife a bowl of petunias is not going to assuage your sins for being an extremely subpar father and husband.
I didn't say extremely subpar.
You didn't have to. You know, Mother's Day gifts, they just seem so desperate. I mean, take me for example. I gave my wife Victoria the best gift that she will ever have.
A diamond?
My offspring. What woman wouldn't want that?
Here we go.
Just let that sink in. The truth will set you free. All right, okay. Hold the phones. Is there like eucalyptus in here? Is that eucalyptus or is that a cat? Ugh.
How much is this?
175, I think.
Yeah.
Told you, 175 bucks and dead by Wednesday. Hey, la macaroon. Don't mind if I do. Okay, that's gonna leave a mark. Ugh. Hey, hold your gifts. Let me grab a couple. Thank you. Take those home for the missus. Ugh. Ugh. Attention, everybody. That's not eucalyptus. That is a bona fide cat. I'm okay.
You know what? I'll go ahead and take this before he destroys the place. Is this your shop?
No, it's my mom's place. She opened it when we were kids.
So I guess you didn't get her flowers for Mother's Day.
Actually, every Mother's Day, she would let each of us kids go through the shop and pick out something to give her. We'd all pick out the biggest, most expensive things we could find.
I guess she bought her own gifts.
Oh, she paid for her flowers and much more. She paid with long days and short nights, replacing her worries with prayer. She gave up what she needed so that we could have what we wanted. She gave up more than I'll ever really know. But she didn't look at it that way. She would say, "You all are my true little flowers, and it's my job to make sure that you are watered with love and placed in the light of the sun." I mean, that's what moms do, right? They help us grow in God's love so that we can be a witness to God in the world. So, I thank God for her daily, and nowadays I sneak cash in the register and I pay for her flowers on Mother's Day. Receipt?
Can you put these on the tab, please? Door. Here, okay.
I'm holding it with my foot. I am towing the door.
I got it. Happy Mother's Day. Oh, boy.
Good morning, wonderful Waypointers. Welcome to everyone and a special welcome to our moms this morning. Happy Mother's Day. We love you all. There's this very cheesy saying that to the world you might just be a mom, but to your family you are the world. But it's so true. So we just want to say to you this morning, to all the moms, we love you, we appreciate you, we see everything that you do, and we know what a sacrifice it is every day for your whole life to be a mom. So we just want to say Happy Mother's Day to all our moms, to our fur moms as well, cat and dog moms. Happy Mother's Day to you too. Welcome to online, welcome to all our returning visitors. We're so glad you decided to join us for another Sunday. And if you're here for the first time, a special welcome to you. If you are here for the first time, we'd like to invite you. We'd love to meet you. So after the service, if you can just exit the door there and up the stairs to the gallery, We'd love to meet you and just chat to you about what we're all about and what we have for you and your family, and also if you have any questions, so that we can answer those for you. So we'd love to meet you after the service. Then just about our vision, as Waypoint, as this community, is really just to inspire people to follow Jesus. Because, following Jesus just makes life better, and following Jesus just makes you so much better at life. So who wouldn't want that? And on that point of being better at life, we have such an amazing conference coming up this week. It's called Blueprint. It starts on Thursday. It's free. It's Thursday evening, Friday evening, and then there are 2 sessions on Saturday from the afternoon. It's like afternoon through to the evening, with an awesome guest speaker, Jacques Malan. It's free, so please book a ticket on Quicket on our app or on any of our social media platforms. You'll see more information there. We'd love to see you there. If you do miss the conference, we invite you to join us for the service on Sunday, which will be done by Jacques Malan, the same guest speaker that will be doing Blueprint. So we invite you to just come join that and just hear, what God has on his heart. We're very excited about that. If you've been with us for the last few weeks or not, we're in a series called One Another. To be wrapping that up today. It's our last service of this series where Dirk will be bringing the message. Join us for that this morning. But now we're just going to sing 2 songs. So I just invite you guys to stand with us. Maybe just say hello to the person next to you or behind you if you haven't greeted them yet. And then we're going to sing 2 songs, so you can stand. There's a grace when the heart is under fire. Another way when the walls are closing in. And when I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. There was another in the fire, standing next to me. There was another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding of how I've been set free, there is a cross that bears the burden, where another died for me. There is another in the fire. There is another in the fire. And all my dead left for dead beneath the waters. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. And should I fall in the space between what remains of me and this reckoning, either way I won't bow to the things of this world. And I know I will never be alone. There is another in the fire, standing next to me. There is another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding what power set me free, there is a grave that holds nobody. Now that power lives in me. There is another in the fire. Oh, 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 and I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness bows to him. And I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between wears thin. And I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. There is no other name but the name that is Jesus. He who was and still is and will be through it all. So come what may in the space between all the things unseen and this reckoning, and I know I will never be alone. And I know I will never be alone. There'll be another in the fire standing next to me. There'll be another in the waters holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding how good you've been to me, I'll count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. And I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness bows to him. And I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between wears thin. And I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. There'll be another in the fire standing next to me. There'll be another in the waters holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding how good you've been to me, I'll count my joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. Count my joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I'll count my joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. And you have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. And you have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for this morning where we can just fellowship, Father, and just come together to just hear from you, Lord. Father, thank you for your reckless love, Lord, that never stops chasing us down, that nothing that we can do less or nothing that we can do more will make you love us any different, Father. Lord, I just pray a special blessing over our mothers this morning, Father, where they are often such a beautiful reflection of this reckless, unconditional love that you also showed on earth, Father, that daily they keep loving and they keep pursuing those around them unconditionally, Father. So may they just feel extra loved and extra blessed this morning, Lord. I just pray that you'll go with us into this message, that Derek's message will be anointed and that it will fall on fertile ground this morning, Lord. And yeah, we just open up our hands to do what you're busy doing in our lives. Yeah, amen.
Good morning and welcome to week 3 of One Another. Tian, welcome back from America. If you want to shake the hand that shook Andy's hand, connect with Tian over coffee at the end of the service. In case you're wondering who Andy is, because I had the question, how many Andys do we have in Waypoint? We've got a local Andy, but when we reference Andy, generally speaking, it's Andy Stanley from North Point. So don't connect with Andy at the back because you want to know who this Andy is that Tian shook his hand with. Connect with Andy over Andy. And now that you're all confused, let's get focused. Jesus gave us this clear instruction. It comes from John 13, and Jesus says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." That instruction is clear, but it's difficult and it's challenging. But as a faith community, not as a church, because often we can be known as a church, and when we say a church, we can think that could be an organization if we're big enough. It could be a building. And when we talk about what we are known for, it could be, man, that church, their worship is phenomenal. That church, you must hear those guys preach. That church, you must see their kids' environments. If we are known for those things, we are known for the wrong things. Not that they're not important, but that shouldn't be the most important things. What we should be known for is what Jesus tells us in John 13, love one another. The thing we must be known for is how well do we one another? How well do we love one another? That's the main thing. If we can get that right as a faith community and as faith communities in general, we will really see a difference in our country and in our communities. So that's the focus of this whole series of One Another, especially within this context of coming out of COVID, where our one anothering muscles kind of atrophied. Anybody that does sport and the guys that are recovering from COVID, their biggest gripe is they can't exercise. A, because they're addicted to it, just judging, no, I'm not going to go there. But because they know if you don't exercise that muscle, you lose the strength of that muscle, and you have to build back up again. Our one anothering muscles have grown weak because of COVID. We need to get that right. So that's why we decided this is a perfect time for a series about how do we get this right, this thing that's so important that Jesus says you must be known for it. And then the next verse, Jesus says, by this, if you get this one anothering right, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Because when you love somebody, people can see that you love somebody. You go above and beyond. And when we get that right, people will see it, people will know it. So what we're talking about is, as a local church, referencing a faith community of people, us being the church, getting one anothering right and being able to connect. So now that we've established that, now we're going to talk about what's a stumbling block for each and every one of us within this process of one anothering. And that's a concept called a narrative. As human beings, let's just take life in general. There's this principle that everything will revert to the state of least energy, right? In other words, it's an excuse to be lazy. You just want to do as little as possible. Everything in nature wants to revert to that state. Our brain does that automatically. Our brain does that by creating narratives, story. A narrative is simply a story that explains and connects details, right? And this is how it plays out. Something would happen, you would learn from that experience, you would make a connection. And our brain, when we grow up from small, we learn through probability learning and through pattern learning. Probability simply is what's the chances of this happening? So our brain starts to form patterns around probability so that when we're in a situation that we knew for the first time, we don't start from scratch developing coping mechanisms and answers and strategies. We divert back to what have we learned? What do we know? And it enables us to make shortcuts, right? If you're doubting that process, if you walk into a store and you're looking for clothes, you can look at a shelf and say, I don't like this, I don't like that, this is what I like. Why? Because of that whole system playing out in your brain. You can listen to the first 3 bars of a song and say, I like it, I don't like it. Why? Because you connected it with previous information. The challenge is we do that with people. We employ narratives with people. And there's 2 challenges with applying narratives when it comes to people. The first one is simplifying. We tend to simplify people. And the second one is it makes the impermissible permissible. So we're going to focus on those 2 things for a second. What do we mean with simplifying? Simplifying, to simplify it for you, is we're all familiar with some other form of personality test or profile on a person. Whether it's the Myers-Briggs ENFP, or if it's the colors that we did recently, where you blue, you red, or you this person, that person, that's what we revert to kind of put somebody in a box, because dealing with people is difficult. People are difficult, and people are difficult to understand. And to help us understand people better, we take a snapshot view of somebody, put them in a box, and it kind of explains their behavior and their thinking and how I should interact with them. Are you with me? Right? So that is what we default to constantly, but it comes with a challenge. The challenge is that we will simplify a person. We will look at what they dressed like, what they present like, and we will make a snapshot judgment on that person. If you walk into a service-based business, like a municipality, or in other words, a lack of service business, and you see somebody dressed in a certain way, presenting in a certain way, you're already predicting how this is going to play out and what kind of service will I get from this person. If you have 4 people standing in, let's make it practical, Midas, and you have to walk in there and buy something and you're in a rush, you need to pick out of the 4 who's going to be the most knowledgeable and the person that's going to help me the quickest. I had a guy serving me yesterday, and that's why it's a relevant example. Man, this guy was slow. It's like, and I'm like, guy, I've got time that's ticking away. I've got kids that are growing older by the minute, and you're acting as if I've got all the time in the world. But if I had to pick, I would have picked somebody different, because that's what we do. We make snapshot decisions. Our challenge today is we go on social media, a few thumb scrolls up, and we create a perception of that person based on what they liked and don't like. So we see what kind of music they like, what kind of books, movies they like, and so that's who you are. That makes sense now. That's what we do. We simplify that. But it goes beyond choice of clothes. It goes beyond hairstyle or lack of hairstyle. And it goes to political views and worldviews. Oh, you like that party. Oh, you like this event. And we start to form a perception of that person. And we put them into a box. And that leads us to the second part of this narrative challenge, is it makes the impermissible permissible. Because, and I'm just using this as a completely fictitious example, right? Let's say I'm conservative, and I look at Eugene's status, and I see he's liking all of these liberal views and liberal things. So I create this perception that Eugene is liberal. This is completely hypothetical, right? And the fact that nobody's laughing is confirming the fact that it's completely hypothetical. And now suddenly, I'm engaging with him over business, and something goes wrong, and we're having this conversation, and suddenly in the back of my mind, there's this narrative that's starting to form. Yeah, but he's a liberal. No wonder he's like this, he's like that. And suddenly I lose my temper, and I say things I shouldn't have said, and then afterwards, I justify why I reacted that way. And I'm like, you know, most these liberal guys, they just want to keep on provoking you. How can you have a sensible conversation with somebody that doesn't eat meat? Can you see how we're starting to create stories, put people in boxes, so that suddenly behavior that shouldn't be acceptable becomes acceptable? So our problem with narratives is it simplifies the unsimplifiable, because how can you simplify a person that's got a backstory, that's got a history, that's got a lifelong experience of events and challenges, and you engage with them in a snapshot, but you want to put them in a box and say they are the same as that person that's got a completely different story. Just because they wear the same red beret, you now put them in the same box. And then it gives you the excuse to act the way that you do. Love everybody, but not the taxi drivers. They're in a category of their own. It doesn't apply to them. No, it applies to them as well, because we put them in a box. How must I respect that guy that doesn't have respect for me? He's pushing me off the road. He's got no respect for me and where I'm going to in my time. There's no way I must respect him. That's exactly the kind of person we must respect. Because Jesus broke narratives. Jesus broke through the stories that were created about people and treated them differently. In those times, tax collectors were the taxi drivers of today. Those days, Rome was the oppressor. Everybody hated Rome. Everything was blamed on Rome. No service delivery, potholes, everything was Rome's fault. And the people that were employed to get the taxes for somebody that we didn't like then went, and instead of just charging you 2,000 rand, they charged you 3,000 rand, because they took that extra 1,000 for them. And everybody did it, and everybody knew it. So the tax collectors were despised. They were shunned. They were ostracized. You kind of had to make a choice at that point in your life when you were given the opportunity to be a tax collector: is be wealthy or be liked, because you couldn't have both. But Jesus comes into this town, and there's this tax collector, and he climbs a tree to see Jesus, see what this fuss is all about. And Jesus sees him. And the crowd is ready, because they know how you should deal with tax collectors. And this narrative of tax collectors is strong within their culture. And they're ready for Jesus to tell this tax collector exactly where he can put those taxes. But Jesus says this. Jesus says, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must rebuke you today. That's not what Jesus says. He says, I must stay at your house today. And they were surprised. They were shocked. They were horrified. They were disappointed. Because Jesus spends time with them. instead of challenging him on his approach and his views. There's another instance that played out where a woman was caught in adultery. And she was brought before the council. And everybody knew the story. Everybody knew that when this happens, you stone the person. And they knew that this is the ideal opportunity for Jesus to judge her. And they say, but Jesus, what do you say? And Jesus says nothing. Jesus goes and sits next to her. And he writes in the sand. And what he writes is the following. He says, let any of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. And nobody does. By the time he looks up, everybody's walked away. Because Jesus looks through the narrative of this is a worthless person, this is a person that's at the heart of the decay in our society, and we need to root it out with all means possible. Jesus looks past that story that people have created of her, and he sees the person. There was another story of a leper that comes to Jesus. And instead of Jesus seeing this person that's on the outside of society, that should literally, physically be on the outside of society because that person can infect other people, like COVID. Instead of avoiding that person, Jesus reaches out, touches the person, and he heals the person. That's the Jesus that breaks narratives. So Jesus engages with a group of people in John 8, and we read this. Now the tax collectors and the sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. No wonder the tax collectors and the sinners were around Jesus, because Jesus treated them like nobody else treated them. Jesus heard them like nobody else heard them. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Jesus hears the muttering in the crowd, and he responds to the muttering in the crowd. He acknowledges the discontent that there sits within the heart of people. He responds to that by sharing 3 stories. The purpose of those 3 stories is for them to understand how he sees people. The intent of those stories for us this morning is to help us to understand how we should see other people. It's amazing to think that Jesus shared this with them to inform not just their thinking, but their actions, so that we today can look at that and say, how does that inform my thinking and my actions? Jesus shares the story of the 3 losts. And the first story is this one. Then Jesus told them this parable, because they're not understanding. And Jesus is saying, let me use another way of trying to get this across to you. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? For us, it makes no sense. On paper, those sums don't add up. Why would you leave 99 and go and look for one? We're talking about 1%. Why is that 1% so important? They understood why it's so important. They knew why that shepherd would do it, because their culture understood that. Ours don't. Our reference is a Karoo farm where you've got thousands of sheep. You've got other people looking after your sheep. You come and you visit every now and then, or if you're on the farm, you go and you check in on them. But you basically, how many sheep do I have? Have we lost 3 again? Oh, tough luck. At least I've got 3,000 more. That's our reference. For them, a shepherd lived with his sheep. The sheep went in the veld and he slept at home. He slept in the veld with his flock. He knew his flock. He could say to you, that one there is called Q-tip, because that ear is always hanging. We don't know why. That one there is called Snowball. She's always had fluffy wool. And he's always whiter than all the others. Yes, I know she's got kind of a gimpy back leg because the wolves tried to get her, but we managed to save her. That one there is pork chop, because we nearly ate that one. Man, does that one get into trouble. Jesus knew that they knew that a shepherd knows his sheep. It's not a collective noun, a flock of sheep. Somewhere there, over there, there's a sheep, and one of them is missing. So what? They were intimately involved with their sheep. We grew up on a small holding, and we had a neighbor that had sheep. He only had a few sheep, and him and his wife lived alone. They had no kids. His sheep were his kids. He knew their names. That's why he got so upset when our dog runs up and down the fence and chases those sheep, because it's causing anxiety to his sheep that he cares about a lot. It's that kind of a relationship where if one goes missing, it's a name that goes missing. Jesus doesn't see a collective noun, people, and he died for people, and he did this for people. Jesus knows our name. He knows your name. He knows your story. He knows your faults. He knows what excites you. He knows what you are passionate about. Jesus knows each and every one of us intimately, so that if one goes missing, he goes and he finds the one. That's why we then read, and when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep." That's what Jesus is trying to say, is that there's a name, and that God knows our name. The second story goes like this. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? She's got 10, she loses one. Now we're talking about 10%, not 1%. But here's the difference. That coin could have fallen behind the couch. It's all dusty. The couch could have moved on it. And as the couch moved, that coin could get scratched. We don't know where that coin fell in or if the dog licked it. But when we find it, we don't say it's lost its value just because the outside is now scarred and dirty. Jesus looks at us differently and treats us differently because he knows the number that the value has of that item. God looks at us differently because he knows the value that we have. Jesus knows that we've got value because God created us in our image. Jesus knows the value we have because he knows, our Father knows, that every hair on our head is counted. That we were created before time began because God had a story for us that he was busy creating. And we were created for that story. Because we all have value. There's a number to that value. And that's why when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me. I have found my lost coin." Then the last story we're very familiar with. The last story goes, Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate, my inheritance." So he divided his property between them. A son goes to his father and he says, "Let's pretend that you're dead. And give me what I would have received when you're dead." And culturally speaking, their relationship at that point was dead. The son disowned his own father by claiming his inheritance. He then goes and he spends his inheritance. It's like taking what your father's given you, that's your inheritance, goes to the boardwalk and he burns through the money. It's got nothing to show for it. he ends up in the pigsty. He comes to the realization that in the conditions that he's living in, his father's servants at home are living in better conditions than he is. So let me try this. Let me go home, see if my father will take me back in as a servant. So he's worried about the fact that his father would be willing to take him back in as a servant. But meanwhile, something else was playing out. The father was watching the horizon, watching for the son that everybody else has written off to return. And that's why we read, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. Because in that moment, his father knew his story. His father knew what he went through. His father's been waiting, full of grace, for this moment to play out. And was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. And his father not just brings him in as a servant into the house, he brings him in and restores his rightful place as son in the house. He gets them to prepare a feast for this moment, to celebrate it. But the older brother complains to his father about it. He says, I've been with you, I've been working for you, and this is what you do. And his father then says this to him. My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. Jesus treats us differently because Jesus sees new beginnings. Everybody else wrote that son off, said he does not deserve a second chance. But God the Father sees the potential for a new beginning and a new relationship. So when society writes people off because of a story, we see the potential for new beginnings in people. We are the receivers of new beginnings. We are the receivers of second, third, fourth, and fifth chances that God has given us. Do we really, honestly, not want to give that to other people? God has given that to us, and He's willing to give it to us, and we're not willing to extend that to the people around us. Is that what's stopping us from engaging with one another? Let me take you through 3 practical steps, and then I'm going to close it in terms of what that means for us. So how do we change this? How does this inform practically how to be more effective at one another, so that people don't even need to ask if we're a Christian, because they'll know by how well we one another. The first thing is to know somebody's name. Get to learn somebody's name, because when you know somebody's name, you get to know someone's story. That's why we've pushed this energy into Mandela Bay Community Movement, because we realize it's an opportunity for us to bring communities together where people have been placed in boxes because of an address. You live in that area. Oh. You come from over there. Oh. To break through those narratives, to get to learn somebody's name so that we get to know somebody's story. That's the purpose of MBCM. That's why One House a Month is such a profound tool, because it now gives us an excuse to be where the narrative is, I'm not supposed to be there. I now have an excuse to be here. And when I'm here, it gives me the opportunity to get to learn a name and get to know somebody's story. My daughter Genevieve went with me to a community meeting in Joe Slovo. Because of timing that they had and her having been picked up at that time, I said to her, it's not a problem. I'll pick you up. You'll go to Joe Slovo with me, right? A place where a lot of people won't even go. So Genevieve goes with me. We connect, the meeting goes, we come back. We're driving back. I didn't ask her. Out of her own, she says to me, "Man, what an amazing group of friendly people. Why?" Because she learned names and she heard people's stories. And it's not a box that I can put people in because they're in an address, and it excuses me from what they're going through and what they're experiencing. That's what we're talking about. Get to learn people's names, get to know their stories. The second thing is, know the number. Get to know and pre-decide beforehand what somebody is worth. Don't engage in the moment and then make a decision in terms of what somebody is worth. Use the same measurements that Jesus gave us to measure the worth of somebody. And lastly, new beginnings. Offer someone a second chance. Where everybody else sees a Zacchaeus that will always and only be a tax collector and somebody to be avoided. A woman that's been caught in adultery, that's at the heart of decay in our society, and that's all she'll ever be. A man that's a leper, that's to be avoided. Jesus sees new beginnings. We need to see new beginnings and therefore give people second chances. That's what we need to employ, what we need to use. When we get that right, those three things, a name, a number, and new beginnings, we are able to engage differently. We are able to draw people in more effectively. And when people feel drawn in, they can contribute more. So our challenge this morning is simple, but it's difficult. Because it's easy to understand that and know it, but it's difficult to employ. And to land this, make it practical for us. It's exactly what played out 80 kilometers from where we are over the past 3 weeks. Where in 2018, the workers in the Citrus Valley, Sundays River Valley, citrus growing area, rioted because of poor working conditions. And out of that destructive process, something positive came. A Citrus Growers Foundation that said, let's make a difference, let's impact, let's voluntarily contribute to a program that's going to uplift people. Relationships were formed, relationships were built. And then just 3 weeks back, it all started back up again. Its only design is to break down all of the positive work that's been done over the past 4 years. To reaffirm the narratives that we have of whatever those narratives are. People will never recognize the chances they've been given. People will always want to do as little as possible. The other side of those narratives, farmers only exploit us. We live in horrible conditions because of farmers. Its only design is to bring back those narratives that 4 years was spent trying to break down. That's our challenge. Is to practically, when life throws these hard curveballs, to resist them and not revert back to old narratives, but work through and push through. And that's why it's so challenging to be a Jesus follower, because when you're a church goer, you can check in for a church service and you can check out for a church service. But when you're a Jesus follower, you're all in all of the time. Even when life demands that you look at things differently and everything inside of you says, I don't want to look at people differently. That group of people, I want to continue seeing them the way I've seen them, because their behavior has confirmed this. That's a second and a third and a fourth chance. Because if Jesus employed our method of this is it, and I'm drawing a line and I'm writing you off, we would have been written off. So let's engage with this process proactively. Let's get uncomfortable and let's learn names, decide numbers, and Be focused on new beginnings. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you that you've come and you've encouraged us and you've challenged us to be better at one anothering, to be better at being present with people and showing people your love. Father, it's unbelievably challenging, and I pray that you would make us sensitive to opportunities to be better, to look back at situations and evaluate, and to inform so that we can be better at one anothering. And Father, we're excited about the impact and the change that it can have in our families and in our communities. And we thank you for that. Amen. It was so great that you guys have joined us this morning online. Thank you for being with us. It's great that you guys are able to use technology to be present with us this morning. And if you want to recap some of what we've gone through, feel free to have a look at it online. Giving will be at the door. Giving is only for people that have prepared for it and don't feel under any obligation to give. And at the end, the coffee shop will be open. So remember, if you want to shake the hand that shook Andy's hand, it will be available in the coffee shop. And have a great week.